Hello, this is Andy Liggett. This is Andy Walks With Me. We are now in Matthew chapter 14. And there's two major miracles that happen in Matthew chapter 14. I think this is where Jesus kind of brings out the big guns. This is where he's doing, I mean, they're all big miracles, but he steps it up, I would say, a little bit in chapter 14. So it starts off, that Herod heard that Jesus was doing all these miracles, and he says, oh my, John the Baptist has come back to life. And Herod was pretty paranoid because he had just killed John the Baptist. It's kind of funny how it mentions in the Bible, like he said, oh, John the Baptist has come to life, and then like as a footnote it was like Herod killed John the Baptist. And I won't get into how he did it, but the Bible, it says in this chapter. But Jesus goes and he starts, it said that he was alone, and then people started to follow him. People were going out of their way, following him. They wanted to hear him. They wanted to be healed by him. They wanted to hear his teachings. People were very interested in Jesus. And it mentions this. This is the feeding of the 5,000. So it mentions that Jesus fed 5,000 here, and then later on he feeds another 4,000 people. And this story has always been really interesting to me, because when I was young, some kid came up to me, we were talking, and he said that he believed in God, but he didn't believe this story. He picked this one out. And I remember thinking, I wonder why he would pick this one. And then it made sense to me, it's kind of an amazing story. Maybe more amazing than other ones. But what's interesting about this story, if you think about it, is that it's not a miracle that was done in a corner somewhere. It was done for 5,000 people. And the writing of this book was still during the lifetime of the people that would have been there. So you can't just make a claim like Jesus fed 5,000 people if he didn't do it. Much less, it says that it was 5,000 plus women and children. The amazing thing to me is that, that he did it to begin with, but the reason that he did it, and I guess we don't know exactly the reason that he did it, but we can look at what we have learned from this story. One of the things that we learn is that Jesus has the ability to be a creator. Where else do you see him just creating something? And some may say, he started with fish. It's not like he's just creating it. But when God made man, he used the dust, and when God made woman, he used a rib. It's still creating. Jesus is creating fish. This was a polytheistic world that they were living in at the time, and there was a god that would have been well known, named Genius. Genius was known to be the god of making things, of the fish. It's not the god of the fish, but in the same way that we have genes, that's where we get that. Or generations, these things come from the idea of genius being the god of reproduction. And so it's showing here that Jesus is the god of that. He's greater than genius. He's also greater than Moses, who in the wilderness, God provided food through the headship of Moses. But Jesus here, he's creating it himself, and he's making fish and bread. And Another thing that I think is very interesting is that part of the reason that he did it is because the people followed him with no care about their food. You know, they're saying, you know, this is a desolate place, you know, they need to start going away. You know, they followed Jesus to the point where you know, they may have fainted, to put it in a biblical term. I mean, we use that term too, but you know, that's the way it says it. You know, these people, they needed food, but they don't care about that. They care about following Jesus. I feel like we should do that also. In our following Jesus, we should do it with, you know, a certain self-abandonment, where we can say, I'm going to follow Jesus and I'm going to rely on him to provide for me. And so I think that's interesting. So that's miracle number one. The second one is right after he feeds all the, you know, the 5,000, probably 10,000. Oh, and it said that there was 12 baskets left afterward. Like, he didn't just feed 5,000 or 10,000 people. It was like there was food left over. Anyway, his disciples get into the boat and they go to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And it said that they got caught in a storm, and the waves and the wind were really beating on them. And it probably wasn't a very long journey. However, they weren't making any progress, and it was probably about nighttime as they left. But it said that it was probably somewhere between 3 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning. So these sailors were probably pretty tired. Anyway, Jesus just comes up walking on the water, and it said that they were so afraid they thought it was a ghost. You know, they were completely freaked out by this, and so would I. But Peter says, Jesus, if it's really you, ask me to come out on the water with you. And he says, come out on the water with me. And so he does. I must believe that Jesus was really delighted that Peter asked him to do that. That's the kind of thing, if I'm noticing something a lot in this go through of the Bible, it's just how much Jesus loves faith. Just like stepping out in faith. And he probably loved it so much, and Peter came out and walked on the water with him. Pretty incredible. And I wonder how that applies to us also. You know, in the same way that the people were following Jesus with that self-abandonment, you know, Peter wanted to walk on the water. He wanted to be with Jesus. And Jesus did it for him. You know, Peter ended up falling, but at least he tried. I've never asked Jesus to let me walk on the water, but there was something else I was going to say about this. Oh, there was a sermon that I watched, and he was like, what was the point of this? You know, why did Jesus walk on the water with them? And his interpretation, I don't disagree with, but it's not one that came to me right away. And it's the idea that Jesus is there when you don't think he is. And he can get you wherever you are. You know, they say that he was probably, that when they were in the boat, they were probably about 3 miles out. So Jesus walking on the water for 3 miles, probably. And I'm sure all the disciples on the boat were thinking, there's nobody that could come out here and save us. You know, Jesus is not with us right now, but, you know, he has the ability to do that. So, all right, well, that's Matthew chapter 14. Have a great day.